Evidence is surfacing that links Annie Guthrie's vehicle directly to Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law. We are talking about Tomaso Chioni, Annie's 50-year-old husband from Tucson, Arizona, the man married to Savannah Guthrie's sister. Sources within law enforcement have indicated that Tomaso Chioni is now considered the primary person of interest. I repeat, official channels are suggesting that the son-in-law, the man inside the family circle, may be the prime suspect in this disappearance. Is the investigation into Nancy Guthrie's abduction about to veer off into an entirely new direction? While the online community obsesses over grainy doorbell footage and phantom masked figures, there is a financial undercurrent to this narrative that has gone largely ignored. It begins with a stark reality. Nancy's daughter and son-in-law bring in less money in a full year than a single month of the ransom demand. Their vehicle was impounded and never released. Police claim they have been cleared. Yet, if that is accurate, why does the investigative spotlight keep swinging back to the couple who saw Nancy moments before she vanished? The court of public opinion has already delivered its verdict on Annie Guthrie and Tomaso Chioni. Browse any discussion board, true crime thread, or Reddit subforum dedicated to the Nancy Guthrie mystery, and the conclusion is nearly unanimous. They are guilty. The theory holds that the daughter and son-in-law engineered the abduction of an 84-year-old woman from her own bedroom, manipulated the crime scene, and attempted to siphon millions from a relative with the means to pay. That is the internet's narrative. But conviction is not proof, and the hard data currently available in the public record paints a picture far more intricate than what online commenters are willing to digest. So, in this broadcast, we are shifting the approach. We are not just recounting events. We are going to meticulously dissect every scrap of verified intelligence regarding Annie Guthrie and Tomaso Chioni. We will examine what they earn, the assets they hold, their movements on the night Nancy disappeared, the items seized during the police raid on their residence, the findings of veteran reporters, the sheriff's official rebuttals, and the analysis of retired FBI profilers. By the time we finish, you will possess the necessary facts to form your own conclusion. Fair enough? Good. To comprehend why suspicion has fallen so heavily on Annie and Tomaso, you must first understand their identities, because they do not fit the profile of masterminds behind America's most high-profile missing person case. Annie Guthrie is Nancy's firstborn and the elder sister of Savannah Guthrie. She is a poet, the author of a 2015 book titled The Good Dark, a collection exploring the depths of human consciousness. She teaches a course at the University of Arizona Poetry Center that treats writing as a form of linguistic divination. She crafts artisanal jewelry in a Tucson warehouse and manages publicity for Core Press, a small, independent feminist publishing house. Her workshops generate $120 per session, and she only hosts them once or twice annually. Annie Guthrie is not a public figure. She is not wealthy. She is an artist surviving in the Arizona desert, engaged in labor that barely registers on the radar of the mainstream economy. Consider the implications of that. A woman with a graduate degree in creative writing, handling, marketing for a niche press, and running sporadic poetry workshops. That is not the profile of a six-figure earner. That is the profile of someone who prioritized art over affluence. Anyone familiar with academia or the arts recognizes that existence. It is intellectually rich, but financially precarious. Her husband, Tomaso Chioni, was born in the Tuscan town of San Giovanni Valdarno, Italy. He immigrated to the United States in 2006, marrying Annie. That same year, they share one son. For the last 15 years, Tomaso has instructed 6th grade science and AP biology at Basis Oro Valley, a charter school in Tucson. His annual salary falls between $65,000 and $73,000. Beyond the classroom, He plays bass guitar in a local band, Early Black, conducts herpetological studies, dabbles in writing, and crafts handmade pasta. In a school profile from 2015, he admitted that if he were not teaching, he would aspire to be a rock star, jokingly adding, quote, "But wait, I am a rock star." In a 2013 interview, Annie described him as her greatest mentor, calling him a master manifester who writes poetry through his way of life. They visit Italy whenever funds allow. They reside in a property in the Catalina foothills of Tucson, estimated to be worth between $650,000 and $1 million, located just 4 miles from Nancy's residence. By all metrics, this is a middle-class existence, comfortable, but far from opulent. And that financial reality is the crux of the matter, because standing in stark contrast to this couple is Savannah Guthrie, co-anchor of NBC's Today Show, one of the most visible figures in American media, with an estimated net worth of $40 million and a salary topping $8 million a year. Her husband, Michael Feldman, is a founding partner at FGS Global, a massive strategic communications firm, boasting his own personal net worth of nearly $6 million. 2 siblings, 1 roof, 1 shared trauma of a father gone too soon. Yet, their financial realities couldn't be starker. One commands an $8 million annual salary. The other scrapes by running poetry circles for $120 a pop. This economic chasm isn't a fresh wound. It has widened slowly over 30 years. It began when Savannah started clawing her way up the broadcast ladder, moving from dusty local stations in Montana and Missouri to the bright lights of NBC, while Annie remained in Tucson, cultivating a quiet existence defined by art, not assets. In peacetime, silence covers these disparities. No one pens think pieces about sibling wealth gaps when the family tree is intact. But the moment the unthinkable happens when an 84-year-old matriarch evaporates into thin air and demand letters surface the public mind, reaches for the path of least resistance, and invariably that path leads to greed. Nancy's residence is valued at $1.1 million. Annie and Tomaso's holdings hover between $650,000 and a cool $1 million. Tally it up, and the family's total reel. Estate footprint circles the $2 million mark. That specific figure, $2 million, has become the cornerstone of every armchair detective's hypothesis. It begs the ugly question everyone whispers but refuses to scream. Did the sister who stayed behind despise the one who flew away to fortune? Did that envy rot into something lethal? The record shows absolutely zero proof that Annie Guthrie harbored any malice toward her famous sister. Close associates, such as drummer Zach Lind of Jimmy Eat World, have gone on record painting Annie and Tomaso as exemplary, figures devoted caretakers who tended to Nancy with daily diligence. But the internet has no appetite for subtlety. Once the wealth gap was exposed, it formed the skeleton key for every conspiracy theory that flooded the forums. Before we descend into the dark web of speculation regarding what that income disparity signifies, we must examine the physical asset at the heart of this mystery, the residence where Nancy Guthrie spent 50 years and the very site of her alleged abduction in the pre-dawn darkness of February 1st, 2026. Nancy's story began as Nancy Ellen Long in Fort Wright, Kentucky, back in 1942. A University of Kentucky alumna, she wed Charles Errol Guthrie, a Georgia Tech mining engineer, in 1963. His profession dragged them across the globe, including a stint in Melbourne, Australia, where Savannah entered the world in 1971. By 1975, the Guthries planted roots in Tucson, Arizona, securing a 5-bedroom, 4.5-bath sprawling estate in the Catalina foothills for a mere $85,000. Constructed in 1969, the structure commands nearly 3,800 square feet on a full acre of arid desert soil. This building was the family's anchor. It witnessed the children's youth, and remained Nancy's sanctuary after tragedy struck in 1988. Charles succumbed to a massive heart attack while working in Mexico. He was only 49, and Nancy was just 46. Thrust into single motherhood overnight, she scrambled to keep the family afloat. She accepted a clerical role at the University of Arizona's Public Affairs Office, a strategic move to secure a paycheck and, crucially, discounted tuition for her offspring. She climbed the ranks for 17 years, retiring from the role of associate to the vice president of university advancement in 2007. That same year, she attempted to liquidate the property, listing it at $950,000 before slashing the price to $875,000 during the summer months. By October, the housing market collapse likely forced her hand, and she pulled it off the market. Nancy remained. She stayed for another 20 years. Today, the deed remains in her name, with an estimated valuation of $1.1 million. Records confirm it has never been sold since the original acquisition. That estate represents the bulk of Nancy Guthrie's net worth, and in the event of her death, the law assumes a three-way division between her children, Annie, Savannah, and Cameron. To Savannah, sitting on a $40 million fortune, a third of that sale is a rounding error. But for Annie and Tomaso, whose household pulls in between $100,000 and $140,000 annually, a windfall of $350,000 to $400,000 is life-changing. It equals nearly 3.5 years of their total earnings. That is substantial leverage. The pivotal question this case poses is whether that potential inheritance is a powerful enough narcotic to drive a family member to commit a felony, or whether the financial angle is actually far more complex. The ransom notes demanded $4 million in Bitcoin initially, escalating to $6 million in the second communication. These figures weren't random variables. They were calculated with a precise understanding of the Guthrie liquidity, specifically Savannah's. Nancy's home tops out at $1.1 million. The matriarch lived simply. The ransom wasn't calibrated to the mother's wallet. It was targeted at the celebrity daughter's bank account. And when Savannah looked into the camera on February 7th and vowed, "We will pay," she confirmed the leverage points. If this was a staged operation and that remains a massive variable, the motive wasn't a slice of real estate. Involved capitalizing on Savannah's public fame and raw emotional state to squeeze out a multi-million-dollar ransom paid in crypto funds that would arguably funnel to someone inside the circle of trust. That is the narrative the web sleuths have spun. Hard evidence? Non-existent. But the financial logistics are theoretically sound. And it is that very feasibility that has pinned Annie and Tomaso under the microscope for over a month. If this angle is shifting your perspective on the investigation, hit that like button right now and forward this to anyone obsessed with the Nancy Guthrie mystery. Sound off in the comments. Is the money trail a legitimate lead, or is the internet chasing ghosts? And if you haven't subscribed, lock it in and ring the bell. This story is evolving rapidly, and we are tracking every shadow. Now, let's dismantle the timeline of the night Nancy vanished, because that clock is the one thing the public cannot stop analyzing. On January 31st, 2026, Nancy caught an Uber to Annie and Tomaso's residence at 5:32 p.m. She didn't get behind the wheel. She ordered a ride, creating an immutable digital footprint of her arrival at her daughter's estate. Dinner, board games. By all reports, it was a picture of domestic tranquility, the type of routine evening this family had enjoyed hundreds of times over the years. The couple lives just 4 miles from Nancy's place. A quick 10-minute cruise through the twisting asphalt of the Catalina foothills. Nancy made that trip often. Around 9:48 p.m., Tomaso drove Nancy back home. He claims he waited until she was secure inside. The garage door shut tight at 9:50 p.m. Tomaso drove off. He was the last. human being confirmed to see Nancy Guthrie alive. The ensuing 4 hours represent the black hole of this investigation, a void that has swallowed every fact. There are nearly 4 hours of absolute static, a complete informational blackout, silence, nothing, zero. There are nearly 4 hours of dead air, no alarm triggers, no activity on Nancy's phone, no motion, sensors pinging on the property's perimeter, just the void. Then, at 1:47 a.m., the Nest feed cuts out. 25 minutes of darkness later, at 2:12 a.m., a sensor flagged a person event, but there was no visual. Nancy hadn't paid for the cloud storage subscription that saves the clips. FBI Director Kash Patel would later verify that the only reason we know this is thanks to ghost data scraped from Google's back-end logs, not a saved file. At 2:28 a.m., 41 minutes after the camera died, Nancy's pacemaker severed its Bluetooth handshake with her smartphone. The device didn't fail, it just stopped talking to the phone. That implies the phone was destroyed, taken out of range, or Nancy herself was dragged beyond the signal's reach. The phone was discovered inside the residence. Her meds were untouched, but there was blood on the porch, a grim trail leading down the driveway, confirmed to be Nancy's. That 4-hour void between 9:50 p.m. and 1:47 a.m. is the battleground for every internet detective. Where were Annie and Tomaso while the clock ticked? Were they in bed, doom scrolling, or were they somewhere else? There is no public record of an alibi for that specific time frame, and authorities have remained completely tight-lipped on whether their movements have been corroborated. In the absence of facts, the internet has flooded the zone with dark suspicion. And once that rot sets in on a case of this magnitude, it's nearly impossible to scrub out, even with official denials. But it was law enforcement's next move that turned idle speculation into open accusation. Days after Nancy vanished, the search radius expanded. They weren't just tearing apart Nancy's house, they were knocking on Annie and Tomaso's door. On February 4th, a convoy of FBI agents and deputies descended on the property for what the press called a 2-hour meeting. 3 days later, February 7th, the squad came back. And this wasn't a social call. They rolled up after dark, 3 unmarked units idling in the driveway. They stayed for nearly 3 hours. Journalists camped on the perimeter caught the strobe of camera flashes inside forensic photography, despite the shades being pulled tight and the lights kept low. When the deputies finally exited past 10:30 p.m., they were gloved up in blue latex, hauling brown evidence bags, and securing at least one into the back of an unmarked vehicle. Speaking with People magazine, Tracy Walder, a veteran of both the CIA and the FBI, observed that the agents appeared to be transporting forensic gear in a distinct white container. Former Bureau agent Brianna Fox shed light on this methodology, emphasizing that the FBI never cuts corners. They capture every angle, log every detail, and commit fully to the process every single time. Yet, that procedural logic does little to quell a suspicious public watching the Bureau spend 3 long hours inside the sisters' residence, wielding evidence bags and technical equipment. But the scrutiny extended beyond the walls of the house. Investigators turned their focus to the property's septic system, a grim detail that grabbed national headlines and ignited theories that authorities were hunting for a body or biological traces. They utilized a Celebrite device, a sophisticated forensic tool designed to mine data from smartphones, tablets, and computers. The digital secrets pulled from those machines remain under seal, and no public record exists regarding what, if anything, that deep extraction uncovered. Then came the car. Annie and Tomaso's vehicle was hauled from the premises and seized for a forensic workup. Look at the sequence: the marathon, nighttime search, the evidence collection, the septic tank probe, the digital mining, and the vehicle seizure, all occurred prior to the FBI releasing the surveillance footage of the masked intruder. On February 10th, law enforcement was already dissecting Annie and Tomaso's home before the world even knew a masked suspect was part of the story. No official has ever offered a satisfying rationale for that timeline, and that void of information is exactly what fuels the engine of public speculation. Then came the Ashley Banfield report, and it completely shifted the momentum of the conversation. On February 3rd, via her podcast Times Drop Dead Serious Asterisk, the former, CNN and News Nation anchor broadcast a claim that sent tremors through the case. She stated that a source within law enforcement confirmed Annie Guthrie's car had been towed, logged as evidence, and that a link existed between the vehicle and Annie's husband, Tomaso Chioni. But she went further. She alleged her police contact identified Tomaso Chioni as the primary suspect in the investigation. She characterized this source as deeply connected, highly respected, and possessing unimpeachable credentials regarding the inquiry. She included a caveat. These were musings, not hard proof, noting that prime suspect often refers to the initial focus of detectives, not necessarily the sole perpetrator. But the bell had been rung. Tomaso Chioni, prime suspect Annie, Guthrie's husband, the last person to see Nancy alive. Within hours, the allegation was everywhere. The Pima County Sheriff's Department retaliated immediately. They issued a formal denial, stating investigators had not named a suspect or person of interest. During a press briefing, Sheriff Chris Nanos labeled the report irresponsible, warning it could anyone compromise the case and harm the reputation of the individual named. He insisted, "We don't have anybody here listed as a suspect." Yet, Nanos dropped a phrase the internet seized upon with both hands. He admitted, "Nobody is eliminated." Banfield, however, stood her ground. Appearing on Dan Abrams' Sirius XM show on February 12th, she doubled down. She insisted her source had maintained the validity of the intel every day since the story broke, and that the status quo remained. She highlighted the fact that Annie's car was indeed towed, a detail authorities first denied before eventually confirming. She also noted that following her report, her source revealed the atmosphere had tightened inside the sheriff's department, with officials fearing retaliation over the leak. Banfield's retort was sharp. "If it's not true, there wouldn't be any worry." Her source added, "When they take shots at you, you're standing on the target." If you're following this mystery and are subscribed to the channel, sound off in the comments below. Did Ashley Banfield uncover a hidden truth, or did she just toss a lit match into a room full of gasoline? If you haven't joined us yet, do it now. We dig deeper into this case than anyone else. Smash that notification bell, because the next break could happen at any second. The Banfield report kicked the door open, and the web instantly began constructing its own investigation. One of the first threads to catch fire involved a document surfacing on X, posted by an account known as @MattBlack Incorporated. It was an unverified power of attorney filing that appeared to depict Tomaso Chioni signing over durable power of attorney to his wife, Annie, on May 16th, 2025, 8 months before Nancy's disappearance. The paperwork allegedly granted Annie total control over Tomaso's financial and personal life. Independent investigator Street James Hartline weighed in publicly, outlining 3 potential scenarios. He suggested Tomaso might have been battling mental health issues and needed Annie to steer the ship if he became incapacitated. He may have been plotting something illicit, perhaps looking to flee the country or firewall his finances against legal scrutiny. Or maybe there was a bitter real estate war brewing that demanded protective legal maneuvering. Taken in isolation, any one of these theories paints a damning picture. But the truth, according to multiple legal authorities, is far less cinematic. Both legal analysts and rational voices on social media pushed back against the hysteria. Attorneys noted that durable power of attorney filings are some of the most standard documents in the American legal system. They are the grease in the gears of real estate transactions, essential when one party can't make a loan closing or needs a spouse to sign on their behalf. In fact, estate planners and elder law specialists mandate them as standard operating procedure for married couples. Official sources confirmed the paperwork had absolutely no connection to the criminal investigation. But the timestamp, May 2025, just 8 months before she vanished, was enough to ignite the narrative for those already convinced of the couple's guilt. And once a document hits the web, wrapped in a sinister frame, the boring truth rarely catches up to the sensational accusation. Then the spotlight swung to a new player. Bandmate Dominic Aaron Lee Evans, a drummer, a founding member of Early Black alongside Tomaso, having launched the group in 2007 with a third member, Walter Gonzalez. Like Tomaso, Evans is a Tucson-based elementary school teacher. But unlike his bandmate, Evans carries the weight of a heavy past in Pima County, a rap sheet that lists felony charges for burglary, robbery, theft, embezzlement, and driving under the influence. When Banfield named Tomaso as a person of interest, the internet mobilized, tearing through his social circle. Evans was the first name to surface, flagged for his connection to the band and his public criminal history. Armchair detectives dug up photos of Evans and placed them side by side with the grainy FBI footage of the masked intruder, pointing to the dark mustache, the athletic build, and the eyes peering through the ski mask. They called the resemblance undeniable. The narrative hardened instantly. Tomaso was the architect. Evans was the muscle. The logic went that Evans knew Nancy's house because Tomaso would have briefed him on the layout. Evans had the criminal resume to pull it off. He had the physical stature that matched the doorbell video. This theory went viral with such velocity that it effectively dismantled Dominic. Evans's life before a single shred of evidence connected him to the crime. On February 13th, a SWAT team kicked down the door of a home in Marana, a suburb northwest of Tucson. The web forums lit up, convinced the target was Evans. It wasn't. The raid was for a man named Baird Green, later identified as an associate of Luke Dye. But for Evans, the distinction didn't matter. The damage was done. Detectives did bring Evans in for questioning, approximately a week into the investigation. The interview was brief, about 40 minutes. They asked about the band, his dynamic with Scion, and his whereabouts on the night of January 31st into February 1st. Once that 40-minute clock ran out, investigators walked away and never looked back. Evans told the New York Times that he felt like his identity had been hijacked for clicks, for profit, and for entertainment, leaving innocent people as collateral damage. Evans claimed he had met Nancy Guthrie exactly once in his life at an Easter egg hunt in 2011 when he brought one of his kids to her home. This is an elementary school teacher who found himself calling an emergency staff meeting to address murder rumors with his colleagues before retreating into a leave of absence. When asked about Evans, Sheriff Nanos didn't mince words. He said he felt terrible for the man, that Evans was going through hell, and suggested he consult attorneys about suing his online accusers for libel. While Nanos hasn't issued a formal clearance, he also hasn't tied Evans to a single piece of evidence. So where does the truth lie? The internet has already convicted him. But there is another side to the ledger. On February 16th, Sheriff Nanos publicly cleared the entire Guthrie family board, Annie, Savannah, Cameron, and their partners. He painted Annie and Tomaso as victims of a ruthless online witch hunt, stating that the accusations were pouring salt in the wounds of a family that had fully cooperated with every request from law enforcement. He went further than any previous press release. He condemned the online behavior toward the family as horrific noting it was compounding an already unimaginable tragedy. The forensics back this up. DNA recovered from the crime. The scene did not belong to Nancy or anyone in her inner circle, meaning 0 matches to any family member. A black glove discovered roughly 2 miles from Nancy's home was run through the FBI's CODIS database and returned no match to anyone in the family either. That genetic profile is now entering the slow, complex process of investigative genetic genealogy. It's the exact same sophisticated DNA tracking technology that cracked the Golden State Killer file and pinned the Idaho murders on Brian Kohberger. But we also need to clear the deck of the garbage. The internet sleuths haven't just been helpful. They've generated a tidal wave of noise, wild theories that muddy the waters. Take that viral rumor about Tomaso racking up a staggering $50 million in gambling losses down in Mexico. It got picked up by major outlets, spread like wildfire, and dominated the conversation online. But here's the reality. Not a single credible source has verified it. There is 0 paper trail to back it up. It looks like a complete fabrication, a ghost story amplified by algorithms, feeding on the drama. Then there's the arrest of 42-year-old Derek Calla out of Hawthorne, California. He was charged with firing off bogus ransom demands to Annie and Tomaso, demanding Bitcoin through a high-end messaging app. But here's the twist. Calla had absolutely no link to Nancy's actual disappearance. He was just a vulture circling the wreckage, looking to cash in on the tragedy. U.S. Attorney Timothy Chain confirmed the charges, explicitly stating that Calla's fraud is a completely separate beast from the kidnapping probe. And yet, the presence of a scammer hurling fake threats at the couple is itself a detail that throws a wrench into the staged abduction theory. Think about it. If they set this up, why would a stranger in California independently start making demands? Meanwhile, the phantom on the doorbell cam, the masked man, remains a ghost. He hasn't been ID'd. The Bureau pegs him as a male, roughly 5'9" to 5'10", average build, with a dark mustache peeking out from under a ski mask. He was carrying a 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack and packing heat, what looked like a pistol shoved awkwardly into a holster positioned right over his crotch. It's a bizarre, specific detail that investigators have been obsessing over, scouring gun shops and outdoor gear retailers to track down that specific rig. Yet, despite more than 50,000 tips flooding the FBI and sheriff's office, the man remains a shadow. No name, no face. Johnny Grusing, a 25-year veteran of the Bureau, pointed out something chilling in the footage. He noted the suspect showed deliberate, calculated behavior on the porch. He didn't just rip the camera down. He tried to cover it. Grusing sees that as a sign of familiarity, someone who knew the ground, or at the very least, had done their homework. Experts analyzing the footage call it ownership behavior. The way the intruder moved across that porch was precise. He dodged specific angles and tapped the lens, almost checking if the red light was on. That kind of comfort implies intimate knowledge of the house, or that he'd been there before, watching, planning. And this leads us to a massive detail that's been buried in the noise. Authorities confirmed the suspect had visited Nancy's home prior to the abduction. A still frame from the doorbell cam, released by director Kash Patel, captures the same figure at the front door, no backpack this time, on an unknown date before February 1st. 2 law enforcement sources confirmed to NBC that this image was taken on a separate day entirely, though the feds won't say exactly when. That recon visit screams surveillance. Someone walked up to Nancy Guthrie's home, stood on her porch, messed with her camera, and walked away. Then he came back, with a pack, with a gun, with gloves, to take her. The burning question isn't just who he is, but who sent him. How did he know the layout of a house on a pitch-black, secluded street in the Catalina foothills? No streetlights, Zero visibility from the road. And now, here's the linchpin, the car. Annie and Tomaso's vehicle was seized right at the start of the investigation. As of February 27th, a full month after Nancy vanished, the Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed they were still holding it. Brianna Whitney, a reporter for Arizona CBS 5, got a terse statement from officials. All we can say at this time is the vehicle is still part of the investigation. Compare that to everyone else caught in the dragnet. Take Luke Daly, a 37-year-old Tucson local living just 2 miles from Nancy. He was picked up on February 13th during a full-blown SWAT raid. Daly's no angel. He's got a sheet, including drug charges in 2019 that cost him 18 months inside, plus drug sales in 2022, and a bust for gun possession and fentanyl in May of 2025. They grilled him for 4 or 5 hours, then cut him loose. No charges. They took his Range Rover, sure, but they gave it back. Then there's a man known only as Carlos, a GLS delivery driver who might have dropped a package at Nancy's door. They grabbed him on February 11th near Rico, about 60 miles south of Tucson, right on the border. Questioned. Released. No charges, he told reporters flat out. I never kidnapped anybody. They gave him his vehicle back too. In fact, every other person's property in this case has been released to its owner. Annie and Tomaso's vehicle has not. On March 2nd, Luke Daly himself went on the record for the first time, telling the press it wasn't him and that he was preparing to sue both law enforcement and the army of internet sleuths who had branded him a suspect. Daly is back in his car. Annie and Tomaso are not. That discrepancy is the single most stubborn, jagged edge in this puzzle for those convinced the family has been fully exonerated. Retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer tackled this head-on in a video released on her YouTube channel on March 1st. Coffindaffer is a former SWAT operator turned crime analyst for News Nation, and she has dissected the Nancy Guthrie investigation piece by piece on her podcast. * Break the Case with Jen Coffindaffer, FBI. * She made it clear she wanted to dismantle the theory that the impounded car equals guilt for Annie and Tomaso. Her argument was built on cold procedure, and it is worth dissecting because it strikes at the very heart of the debate. Every search at the couple's residence was based on consent. The investigators asked permission, and the couple said yes. No search warrant was ever drafted. Coffindaffer emphasized that this distinction is critical in federal cases. If agents actually had probable cause to suspect the couple was complicit, they wouldn't ask nicely. They would get a warrant signed by a federal judge. The logic is simple. Consent is fragile in court. A sharp defense lawyer can argue the client was coerced, that they didn't grasp the terms, or that the agent overstepped. A warrant wipes the board clean of those arguments because a judge has already weighed the evidence and authorized the intrusion. Coffindaffer put it plainly. As a former agent, if I have probable cause, I never use consent. I get the warrant every single time. The fact that law enforcement never forced a warrant on Annie and Tomaso suggests they lacked the evidence to get one. It is a massive procedural tell regarding where this investigation really stands versus where the online mob thinks it stands. Coffindaffer also noted that authorities seem to be holding multiple vehicles, not just the couple's. She mentioned Nancy's own car, observing she hadn't seen it, returned to the garage and questioned if Luke Daly's Range Rover had truly been released, though later reports confirmed it was. Coffindaffer then pivoted to a chilling alternative theory for why the couple's car might still be in evidence. She asked whether it was possible that the abductor was lurking in Nancy's neighborhood, waiting for her to return from dinner. Could Nancy, have been tracked from Annie and Tomaso's house. She floated the idea that a GPS device could have been planted on the vehicle, or that the perpetrator physically brushed against the car, leaving prints or DNA. In that scenario, the car isn't being held because it proves the couple's guilt, but because it holds the trace of someone else, a fingerprint, a tracker, a single hair that could unmask the shadow who followed Nancy home that night. But this is the gap the internet cannot bridge. It is the contradiction that will define this case until the cuffs go on or don't. The family was cleared. The genetics don't match. The searches were voluntary. Former agents say the arrows do not point to Annie and Tomaso, and yet the car is still there. The Celebrite data extraction has never been addressed publicly. The 4-hour blackout between Tomaso dropping Nancy off and the cameras cutting out remains unexplained. The ransom notes listed specific details: a broken floodlight, an Apple Watch. That implied intimate knowledge of the property. The masked figure visited the house before the abduction, meaning someone either gave him a reason to go there or he stalked a home that sits in total blackness after sunset in a neighborhood with no street lamps. On March 2nd, 2026, day 32 of Nancy's disappearance, Savannah Guthrie, Annie Guthrie, Ducci, and Tomaso Chioni walked arm in arm to a makeshift shrine outside Nancy's home. They laid yellow flowers. They clung to one another. They wept. The family had just announced a $1 million private reward for information bringing Nancy home. Adding to the FBI's $100,000 and an anonymous gift of $102,500, Savannah voiced the nightmare the family had been grappling with in silence. She admitted her mother might to already be gone, that she may have returned to the Lord she loved, but she insisted they still needed to know where Nancy was. They needed to bring her home. That image, the three of them united in grief, is either the portrait. Is this the portrait of a family shattered by grief, desperate to recover a matriarch snatched by a phantom, or are we staring at something entirely darker? The court of public opinion has already delivered its verdict. Police, however, tell a different story. Veteran federal agents argue that the procedural footprint suggests the family is clean. Yet, a seasoned reporter with deep ties inside the department warns that the official file is thin, and the true landscape of this crime is far more twisted than what the sheriff is admitting on camera. Then there is the car, that solitary steel witness bridging two conflicting realities, sitting in a secured impound lot in Pima County, locking away secrets that neither side can touch yet. As of this moment, Nancy Guthrie remains a ghost. No handcuffs have clicked. No suspect has been unmasked. The case file has swollen with over 50,000 tips and nearly 10,000 hours of surveillance tape. Federal sources confirm that agents are dissecting traffic feeds from the Catalina foothills, pushing the dragnet miles beyond the residence. The genetic material recovered from the scene is currently running the gauntlet of investigative genealogy. The shadow on the porch, masked, standing roughly 5'9" to 5'10", average build, sporting a dark mustache and packing a pistol in a custom rig, hauling a 25-liter Ozark trail bag, remains nameless. Detectives are currently scouring gun shops and outdoor outfitters, trying to track the purchase history of that gear. Annie and Tomaso's vehicle sits under police lock and key. The digital extraction data, sealed. That critical 4-hour blackout, never explained to the public. And somewhere in the haze between internet speculation and the sterile police reports, the cold truth about an 84-year-old woman ripped from her sanctuary in the Arizona desert is waiting to break the surface. We need to be surgical with our facts before we sign off. Annie Guthrie and Tomaso Chioni have not been charged. They have not been labeled suspects or persons of interest by any agency with a badge. Sheriff Chris Nanos explicitly cleared the Guthrie clan on February 16th. Multiple retired FBI profilers, with decades in the game, have noted that the investigation's soft approach, relying on consent searches instead of kicking down doors with warrants, points away from the family, not at them. Everything laid out in this dossier is anchored in public record, official dispatches, and forensic logic. We aren't casting stones. We are laying out the evidence and the gaping holes in the narrative so you can weigh the facts of this mystery for yourself. If you know anything about the vanishing of Nancy Guthrie, dial the FBI at 1-800. Call FBI or the Pima County Sheriff's Department at 520-351-490. You can remain anonymous. The family's reward of up to $1 million is cold hard cash. What is your read on this? Leave your theory in the comments. And if you want the deep dive forensic breakdown arguing why this was never a kidnapping, click this video right here. We analyzed every frame. This case isn't cold yet. Someone out there recognizes the man on that porch. Someone knows exactly where Nancy Guthrie is right now. And every sunrise that passes without an arrest only makes the questions we've raised here louder, not quieter. Whether the break comes from a DNA hit, a digital forensic breadcrumb, or a guilty conscience finally snapping, the reckoning is coming. And when it does, we will be here. Subscribe, hit the bell, and we'll see you on the next investigation. The disappearance of Nancy Guthrie is more than just a headline. It is a chilling reminder that in the digital age, the line between reality and shadow is perilously thin. When blood stains a driveway and a camera is silenced at 1:47 a.m., we are forced to confront a dark truth. Justice is not a guarantee, but a relentless pursuit that requires our collective vigilance. This case teaches us the profound value of integrity. Behind the financial discrepancies and the conflicting official statements lies a human life that deserves more than to be a cold case stored on a server. It reminds us that our neighborhood's safety depends on the invisible threads of trust we weave daily. When we ignore the minor inconsistencies or look away from the struggles of the elderly, we leave the door open for tragedy. The true lesson here is one of unwavering accountability. We must be the eyes that refuse to blink and the voices that demand transparency from those in power. Let this story ignite a commitment within you to look closer, to care deeper, and to remember that silence is the greatest ally of injustice. Somewhere, the evidence is waiting. Until the truth is told, none of us are truly safe in the quiet of our own homes. Speak up, for the truth never stays buried forever.